Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode number 59 of the third season of the Fantasy Fullback Dive, brought to you by the good people at the Roto Street Journal. We are paving the way, although not for me, not for anybody of substance, not for the Wolf, I don't think, at least not in the RSJ League. I don't know.
I made it. Yeah, I'm
you won? Okay.
I'm
that's
all the way in, baby,
finals.
knocking Keeg's ass out.
Well, I got ahead of myself. Paving the way, lead blocker, etc., so on and so forth, fantasy excellence, and blah, 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 blah. I'm your host, Nat the Truth Jones. With me, as always, the Wolf of Roto Street himself. Wolf, it was a pretty crazy week 15, you have to admit.
Oh, it was unbelievably crazy. Yeah, some of the top teams. We talked about this too last week and need to come up with the term, whether it's like premature ejaculation or something of that nature when you have a bye week and you explode all over yourself. Like my brother, 204 points last week, put up under 80 this week.
You called it.
And we call it. I mean, it happens no matter what. Every single year when you get the bye and your team blows up, you know you're just going to lose. There's no doubt about it every single time. So that happened to him. Thankfully, I made 3 semis. I'm locked into 2 finals right now. Tonight's game with McCaffrey and a couple others, it will come down to the wire in my third league. But I might go 3 for 3 right now. Obviously, I missed the Fez League, but 3 out of 4 leagues could be finals, so I'm feeling pretty good. But this week was insane, and we have a tweet from our friend Scott Barrett to kind of put it into perspective. He goes, imagine having this lineup. Quarterbacks Jameis Winston, running back 1 Saquon Barkley, running back 2 is Aaron Jones, wide receiver 1 is Adam Thielen, wide receiver 2 is Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 3 is Keenan Allen, your flex is Lamar Miller, and your tight end's Eric Ebron.
Sounds pretty good.
Pretty damn good lineup. I mean, 3 wide receiver 1s, the top 2 horse in the league, and then Aaron Jones behind him, who's been exploding. Ebron, the top tight end score. I mean, sounds like a beastly lineup. If that was your lineup this week.
Well, I mean, little spoiler alert, because I did have 2 of those guys in my lineup in the Roto League.
Yeah, so you already felt
did not even come close to winning that game, I have to say.
Oh, it's awful. So that lineup would have combined to score 140 fantasy points as average each week. They scored combined 29.3. All of those studs I just said.
That's just so crazy.
Isn't that ridiculous? So I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, yes, it takes skill to make the playoffs, to grind out a long season, but some of these times, man, it sucks. You get kicked in the nuts. Fantasy is the cruelest mistress, the best mistress when it's going hot for you.
Best mistress, but so cruel.
But so cruel when she wants to just rip your sack off, and she did that to so many people today. So I apologize if you had to deal with that. If you want to call rotostreetjournal.com/wineline, we're definitely going to try to put up a best of week 15 because this was an especially brutal one. We're actually running a contest, I should say. The best one gets a $25 Venmo, PayPal, whatever you want, and a free shirt, hat, whatever gear from Roto Street Journal. So if you send us the best Roto Street wine of the week, and like we just mentioned, plenty to whine about, plenty of duds. So call on in and let us know. Hit up that number on rotostreetjournal.com/wineline. Let us know what you have to say.
Now, I told you before we rolled, because I got kicked out of the Roto Street Journal League, and I am pissed about that. I mean, I'm not like enraged, but I told you that's not the thing that I'm not the most pissed about. Mm-hmm. The thing I'm the most pissed about, I alluded to last week, which is that my hometown league team is continuing to explode.
Just steamrolling. Hopkins.
We have a thing in our league which I think is pretty cool, which I recommend in leagues that are continuous. Like, you're with the same guys every year. We do this, and I actually think it's a pretty cool idea. The teams that don't make the playoffs, they remain in for what we call the chase. Mm-hmm. And you continue to keep score. You continue to keep playing. And the team that scores the most total points over the playoffs gets the number 1 pick in the draft, and so on down the line.
Ooh, okay.
So
I like that.
I actually think it's a pretty good innovation, and no one else does it except us.
I've never heard that. I like the chase, too. It's a good name for it. I like that. Yeah.
So we call it that. And so needless to say, I am leading the chase substantially. And so, I mean, I can say, like, I'm really happy about that, but I'm not. I mean, I'm really, really, really angry.
Yeah.
My team for the second week in a row not only outscored all the other chase teams, but also outscored all the other teams in the playoffs. So
my God.
It's the team that I thought that I had. It's just they showed up a week too late.
Oh, it's pain. The cruelty of the mistress.
And it makes me so angry. But anyway, we're going to get moving. We're going to talk about some risers, some heroes. It's funny. I listened to a couple other fantasy podcasts, although none of them are as good as this one. But I do listen to a couple of the other guys on some other shows. And it was funny. People were all agonizing about, do you start Derrick Henry this week? And almost all of them were like, no.
Really? Like coming up this coming week?
They're just like, no, the one that just happened.
We were all in. We said ride that hot hand, though.
I know. I'm saying they were like, I just don't trust him. The floor is too low. And yes, his floor is extremely low.
Yeah.
But good Lord, I mean,
holy shit, yeah.
Talk about Derrick Henry for just a second.
I mean, he's on the list of risers, so we can just dive right into it and get
into it. Let's talk about Derrick Henry, and then we'll go back around.
An absolute monster. 33 carries, a career high. So all this committee just been muddled in this gross situation where you can never carve out even more than 10 touches. Gets 33 carries. Unbelievable.
An average is over 5 a carry.
And it ripped it to 170 yards, 2 TDs. Got plenty of goal line usage. It goes to show just what is going on. Why is he not getting 25, 30 a week?
Like the guy for like 3 years.
Oh, I've been waiting for this.
You've been in love with this guy. Like, this is what you've been anticipating. And then you see it. And you're like, oh, right, this is what I always assumed he was capable of. Why hasn't it been happening?
That's the golden question. I don't know whether it's practice habits. Well, I mean, and there are, granted, plenty of times you watch him play, and you're just like, this guy's running like such a bitch. Like, he's 250 pounds trying to bounce it outside and getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage. But when he runs like this, when you feed him 30, and this is what I really think with Henry, and there's some backs that are just this way, Zeke's similar, where they just wear down a defense and they grind him out. You give this guy 25 times, he's running just straight into the teeth of the defense, he's going to wear that team down. And he's got the speed then, once they are broken down, to rip off chunk play after chunk play. And he was just absolutely dominating. I mean, now in his last 2 games, 408 yards and 6 touchdowns on 50 carries over the last 2 weeks. If you've been starting him, and yes, I started him this week in Roto Street Journal League. Someone dropped him a few weeks ago, scooped him up, started him against Keegs for a nice 30 points. But this man's going to win you titles. He gets another great, another juicy matchup coming up. It's just unbelievable. This guy against Washington, who's crumbled. I saw a stat, they've given up like the most rushing yards in the league over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So Henry, one last plum matchup to end the year. He will be the definition of a stretch run hero should he go off again. And I don't see any reason. I mean, there's no way Washington stays competitive. They're going to be grinding it out. And at this point, they're just like, let's see what Henry can rip off 3 weeks in a row. So I imagine he's going to explode yet again and carry people to titles. It's unbelievable. I just hope, just pray that maybe, just maybe, this is the start of something for his future. I think he's only got one more year after this on his contract. So maybe they ride him out like this and see what he does. I don't know, but this is always what it is. It's always a little cock tease to see what he's got, and then you're going to take him in the 2nd, 3rd round next year, and he's just going to be
that's what I want to ask you, and I'm not going to hold you to. I'm not going to hold you to it, but like, right now, like in a vacuum, you're putting your big board together now, like which I know you're going to do the week after the Super Bowl. Where do you put Derrick Henry?
I actually have my big board already made. I have my top 100. I finished.
Yeah, but it's going to be changing.
It'll change a little bit.
Where's Derrick Henry?
And he's one that's going to change because now the 2nd week in a row of doing this, he is right there in like the 30 to 25 range. Again, I keep falling for it.
That's like early 3rd round, and you're going to have to bump him up.
I know. Oh my God, it's crazy to me. He does it every year. Yeah, maybe that's just to keep agonizing me and maybe to make me keep investing these picks in him. But you got to think at one time, I mean, we've obviously raved about this talent and hoped that it would pan out, and something's been clearly holding it back. I don't know what it is other than some of that bitchy runs, but if he can ever get this stretch together where he's running like the monster he is right now, he would be a fantasy tour de force league winner in round 3 if you get that.
He's a 1st rounder if he's like this. I mean, he's number 1 overall pick probably if he keeps doing this, but that's obviously not going to happen. So
right.
Anyway, we're going to move on, and we'll tighten this up a little bit. We just had to rant for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, Derrick Henry. So yeah, the rest will be minute or less. But
Dalvin Cook, new offensive coordinator in the house. Minnesota dominates, puts 41 points up on the Dolphins, who really we knew sucked, even though they beat the Patriots. Speaking of which, you see the Patriots game?
Oh, no, I missed it. One fucking sucked. Come on, awful, god awful. I don't know. We're talking about Dalvin Cook. That gets me excited.
They're 3-4 on the road.
10 points, come on, and just awful throws from Brady.
And the Steelers looked bad.
If you told me the Patriots were going to hold the Steelers to 17 points, I would have said no brainer we're winning that game. How
about if I told you they were going to hold them to 17 points and 3 in the second half?
Right.
How about if I told you that the Steelers were going to get a field goal? Because that's the type of thing you see happen. It's like, oh, Patriots are down a touchdown at halftime. Steelers score a field goal in the second half. Okay, that means the Patriots won by 20.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it was awful, embarrassing. I have no idea. I mean, I'm a little bit nervous. I got to admit that Belichick hasn't really been owning his part. He never really does. That's the Belichick thing. Really. But is that starting to wear off into the team? And now they're feeling they don't have to be accountable. We saw so much sloppiness and jumping off sides and false starts and awful throws from Brady.
So many before the ball penalties. I can hardly ever remember seeing the Patriots get so many.
It's awful. It seems to me like the team is getting lost. And of course, when their back's against the wall, this is when they always somehow figure out a way. Everyone starts doubting them. Everyone starts shitting on them. I'm just nervous they might not have the talent to fully pull it out. I am encouraged by the way the defense is playing, and they have the weapons on offense if they ever can fucking piece it together. So I'm not hitting the panic button yet. But at this point, we're probably going to lose a bye, and there's no chance we're going to get home field. So, fuck, it's scary. It's absolutely terrifying right now.
I mean, you don't want to run into like the Chargers or something in the
as the wild card, right? I know. I mean, the Ravens are the other one, so I wouldn't feel great about the Ravens.
That wouldn't be pleasant either.
No, they're the ones that come to Gillette all the time and they have our number. So it's a terrifying time to be a Patriots fan. But they're going to get it together. I have faith.
I know. I said we were going to keep it short, but then I had to ask the Wolves. And I'm bringing this up because you just don't. I mean, you don't ever see them look crappy in week 15 and 14, by the way.
Back to back
and like 12
at this time of the year.
And I mean, get blown out by the Lions and the Titans on the. I don't know. It's a different look than we're used to, and then, so like
wins against the Chiefs,
and then part of it is like. Part of me is like, this is really weird.
Yeah, but then at the same token, you get dominating wins, against Minnesota, and then a great game against the Chiefs where they pull it out.
The Texans' ass, although the Texans were like a lot different in week 1.
And Watson was rounding into form. I get that, but I mean, we've had some just
still a real win.
Yeah, exactly. Some groundbreaking wins, some just puke-worthy losses. So what is this team? Hopefully Brady just figures it out as he always has. That's my
Don't you think he looks kind of bad?
Yeah, this is the worst Brady we've seen in quite some time.
In a long time, right?
And more so, not just the arm, but the decision making.
The decision making, right? Awful. Like he's doing kind of like uncharacteristically dumb things.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not even trying to pile on. It's just like, when you see someone that's been so good for so long, and then all of a sudden he's not, you're like, well, this is weird. And I mean, then you're like, oh yeah, he's 41. Yeah. Anyway. Dalvin Cook. On that note, Dalvin Cook, new offensive coordinator, dominates the Dolphins, put up 41 points. Cook rushes 19 times for $136, 2 scores in the Vikings Week 15 win. He had another 27 yards on a catch, by the way. Dalvin Cook, riser.
Absolutely, and of course he was logged into your lineup, but now you got to just make sure locked in top like 7-8 play rest of the way. Zimmer talked about wanting to be run heavy. We raved about him as our must-start running back of the week, that we were 8 spots or something higher on the experts than him. Had him in all my DraftKings lineup, so he made a nice day for me. Unbelievable, though, just how explosive he looked. Some of those spin moves, granted, yes, this came against Miami's 29th worst run defense in the league, but he was spinning and carving and just ripping it with unbelievable speed, the vision to bounce it outside and then outrun the rest of the defense on both his scores were just completely beautiful. So moving forward, obviously he's going to be a running back 1 for your championship week. Hopefully he gets to dominate once more. And then even next year, after the game, before I get to next year, Adam Thielen comes out and says, this is the guy we've been seeing every day in practice. We've been waiting to let him carry our offense, and our new coordinator comes in and lets him. We know we're riding him out the rest of the year. We know what kind of player he is. We're going to need that moving forward. So just some nice quotes from his teammates talking about, this was not an accident. This was by design, and it's going to keep happening. And next year, I mean, he's playing himself right back into mid-second.
He's a second-round guy, probably.
At least, maybe even early first if this continues, because he's just so dominant, and this offense can be just so good. We saw how on this Sunday.
Speaking of guys that have looked real good when they've been healthy and have gotten the rock, Chris Carson, 22 rushes, 119 yards and a touchdown, 6 of 6 targets for 29 in the Seahawks Week 15 overtime loss, which, by the way, did you see Sebastian Janikowski in that game, what he did?
No, what happened? I completely missed it.
He missed an extra point, and then he essentially on the next play, which is like you don't usually see, because like if someone misses a field goal, then they don't kick off. But if you miss an extra point, you still have to kick off, right?
Yeah.
And he kicked off, and they ran it back, and he totally could have stopped the guy and just didn't. Just kind of like missed him on purpose. Yeah, it was a bad look. It was like the type of thing where, yeah, I know, me too.
That's
anyway,
awful.
Overtime loss to the 49ers. Bad look. Talk about Chris Carson, though.
He keeps getting labeled like an upside RB2, but how are people not just accepting the fact this is an RB1? He's been that way all year, and even more so now, getting that 6 of 6 targets, a career high, getting some receiving usage now, given the game script was flipped on him and they were coming from behind. It was good to see Carson was still heavily involved even in that situation. So he's obviously been beastly as a runner all year, leads the league in yards after contact. Just really fun to watch. This is one of the few times I got some good glimpses at really watching him, other than highlight tape, but just actually watching how he beats down a defense the entire game and just keeps coming at him. I love that style of running back. I loved watching him play this Sunday, and especially with the receiving. Adding on to that floor, especially with Week 16, you got the Chiefs coming up. To know that Carson would still be involved and see 15 to 20 touches against this, giving up the number 2 points to running backs, the Chiefs are, he's going to be a monster in your championship. So if you got him in round 10, congratulations. He's definitely one of the top value picks of Fantasy 2018.
Dante Pettis caught all 5 of his targets for 83 yards in the 49ers Week 15 overtime win over the Seahawks. Not to repeat myself, this guy seems like he's a legitimate starting option.
Oh, absolutely. At this point, he's got a 4-week span, so you got plenty of sample size. He hasn't had a dud in that 4-week span. This was his lowest because he didn't find the end zone. First time in 3 weeks he hasn't, but still had a nice game. Again, 83 yards. Certainly leading the team in targets, receptions, even beating Kittle on this one. Great after the catch, explosive athlete. Somebody I'm very intrigued by to see what he does next year, too. Dante Pettis, easily startable in your championship if you picked him up and were wondering whether you can trust him yet. The Bears are awful at tackling, and I think Pettis will run right through this defense. It's the one place you can actually exploit them.
Gus the Bus, 19 times, $104, a touchdown in Baltimore's Week 15 win over the Bucs. The Bucs, who just God, what an up and down piece of shit team they are. But the Ravens, they were just what the doctor ordered for the Ravens. Gus the Bus, another big game out of the running back position. What do you think? I mean, can we trust this?
I think you absolutely can. The only reason I wanted to make sure we touch upon him is John Harbaugh before the game saying Kenneth Dixon's going to be way more involved and this running back is going to be more of a committee. Edwards puts that notion to rest, rocks it nearly 20 times for those great stats that you said. The Chargers are a tougher matchup, especially if the game flow gets out of hand and they get up big early. But either way, you can trust Edwards in your flex and RB2 spots. Hopefully you did this week because he had a monster performance for you.
All right, last one. Marlon Mack of the Colts backfield that's been just messing with us all year, kind of, from the preseason almost. You'd have to say even before the season started, this backfield was fucking with us. Marlon Mack, 27 rushes, 139, 2 touchdowns, and the Colts 23-0 Week 15 win over the Cowboys. All you Cowboy fans can stick it up your asses. This is the team that, everyone's, the Cowboys, they're the real deal. No, they're not. No, they're not the real deal. Dak Prescott's still their quarterback. They're not a very good team. 23-0 to the Colts. Really? Really? Anyway, what do you think of Marlon Mack?
I think you got yourself a potential season winner. If you somehow started him this week, he obviously got you nearly 30 points. Unbelievable performance against an otherwise very tough run defense. So it's great to see, especially, again, the Colts offense as a whole being that dominant. That's when those scripts happen that Marlon Mack can absolutely destroy teams. And they have the Giants on deck. So if they're going to do this to the Cowboys, imagine what they're going to do to the pathetic, hapless, useless Giants come next weekend, who have an even worse run defense. We just saw Derrick Henry, who we've been raving about, rip off 170 yards against him. So it's great to see Marlon Mack used as that 27 carry guy in what's otherwise been an inconsistent committee. It's great to see him again separate. He's had those few pockets of domination. He's back to dominate in your fantasy playoffs. He's going to have a monster for you in Week 16 if you own him. And just a last note on that, Ryan Kelly, their center, back in the game, and it was clearly noticeable. This guy's a stud.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
It was the lanes that he had against an otherwise great run defense this whole year were unbelievable. So Mac, the line, everything's clicking. You're going to get a monster in Week 16, so congratulations if you have Marlon Mack right now.
Ballers. All Eagles under Nick Foles, except Alshon Jeffrey. Before we get into this, I mean, you got to admit there's a little tiny part of you that would like to see the Eagles make the playoffs with Nick Foles again.
Gotta do, right? Saves their season yet again.
I mean, as much as everyone likes to blow smoke up Wentz's ass, let's just remember what happened last year and what Nick Foles did. And Wentz has been iffy this year. I know he's probably been hurt more than he's let on much of the year. And, Foles comes back. I don't know, you just beat the living shit out of the Rams. I know the defense had a lot to do with that. We're going to talk about the Rams' inept offense in a minute, too. But wouldn't you kind of like to see the Eagles make the playoffs?
Yeah, actually, no, fuck the Eagles.
I don't know if you're going to commit. But.
No, because of what happened last year. I think anybody outside of a Patriots fan would probably not hate seeing Nick Foles go on another run, but fuck him, fuck the Eagles. I hate them after last year. And fuck their fantasy products outside of Alshon Jeffrey. Foles, right. 270 scoreless yards, not bad, an interception. Fair day, fine day, clearly enough to get the win.
Not up to his Super Bowl standards.
Certainly not. Yeah, not God himself on the field that day. Jesus. But obviously, just all year he's been 160 yards, just a pathetic. Not thrown. He's got one touchdown, I think, in 3 starts. So fantasy wise, Golden Tate only 43 yards. Nelson Aguilar 1 catch. Everything went to Alshon Jeffrey. So if you own Jeffrey, then you must be singing some praises because 8 catches, 160 yards. It was just pure locked in. Like when a rookie comes in and locks into his number 1 guy, there was no doubt who Foles was locked in onto. And Alshon made it worthwhile. 160 yards. Unbelievable. Fresh off a 6-catch, 50-yard TD day. I think Alshon can be back into your lineup. The Texans have been getting destroyed by number 1 receivers. We'll talk about Robby Anderson in a second. So Alshon Jeffrey back in the lineups. Everybody else, though, you can't trust.
All right, Leonard Fournette. He said, quote unquote, the game plan coming in was to limit his carries Sunday against Washington. Well, that's great. That's great, Leonard.
Right.
That's a one. You know what that is? That is a winning fantasy game plan right there. But I want to see if I could just tailor make, kind of your plan. I'd like to see your carries be limited.
Yeah, nothing better than that, right? From your workhorse back, just having his carries predictably.
This guy's more hassle than he's worth in fantasy.
Oh my God, I'm not
interested in all.
He's definitely as the Rotos were starting to compile the lists. He's definitely one of the heavy favorites for bust of the year. So once those Rotos are out, make sure you track who's the
woman
winners.
At a bar, or a woman in general, or man, someone you're trying to pick up. Just someone that is just more trouble than they're worth.
Oh, absolutely.
Just more trouble than they're worth. Just want a little too much out of you or a lot too much out of you for what they're giving back.
I know, and it's one of those things where at one point they gave you some epic performance, so you want to keep going back and you want to keep believing. Even this year, we've had some flashes of 30 carries and 150 yards, and the upside is there. But again, you're paying so much. I mean, this is like you got to buy this person bottle service and take them out to the finest steak dinners, and you're getting half the time they're just gonna bust and do nothing for you. So,
right.
Like you said, just not worth the trouble. Even if they have those couple flashes of brilliance, that's what he's been. I mean, 46 yards yesterday, 18 yards in the receiving game. Completely pathetic. This was a Washington run defense that had given up the most rushing yards over 3 straight weeks. Everyone coming in saying, it's Fournette's time to shine. He's going to have that bounce back week. Make it worth your first round while if you invest in him. And then we find out the plan coming in is to limit his carries. Just a pathetic, just useless guy. Even against the pathetic Dolphins, the matchup couldn't be juicier. I'd have a real hard time trusting this guy. I mean, granted, you'd have to have a pretty damn good option to not play Fournette against the Dolphins.
I don't know,
but this was a plum matchup too, so it just sucks. If you had him and you made the finals and you finally thought he was going to come out for you, nope. Just not worth the hassle. Definitely a guy I'm avoiding next year.
All right, we're going to talk about the Dolphins' backfield a little bit here, Kenyon Drake, but I just want to take a moment to just mention the fact that we're going to be mentioning Frank Gore and someone whose name is Ballage in the same sentence. I mean, there's some real Ballage action going on.
Well, let's save Drake till we get to them. Yeah, we'll save Drake till we get to them. The Ballage.
We're gonna
the elephant sack.
Right. Okay, so we'll talk about that in the injuries.
Exactly.
Okay. Rams passing attack. You want to talk about fallers? Let's talk about fallers. Jared Goff, last 3 games, 1 touchdown, 7 picks.
Oh, my God.
7 picks. Aaron Rodgers has 3 picks all year. Drew Brees has 3 picks all year.
Yeah.
This guy had 7 picks in the last 3 games for this supposedly unstoppable offense. you can't feel great about the Rams going into the playoffs, like in general, right? Like this seems like a highly beatable team.
Absolutely. Especially the more and more they crumble. I mean, they play well at home, so if they were somehow able to secure home field, and that game against the Saints, we saw the upside. They could beat anybody in the league, put up points with anybody in the league, but yeah, crumbling. Did the Bears come in and just break their will? I don't know what's going on right now.
I mean, the Saints beat them up too. You're thinking about the game they won against the Chiefs.
Oh, yeah, that's the one I'm thinking.
And the Saints kind of took them to the woodshed.
The Saints did, yeah. I meant Chiefs. But yeah, so we saw them compete with some of the best, but then they get beaten down by others. Goff, 330 scoreless yards, 2 picks, like you said. He's been
looked like shit. Like looked like a shitty quarterback on some of it. Did you see that ball that he flung to the side when he was getting sacked and it got intercepted? Just kind of threw it.
Right.
Like I would if I were getting rushed.
Take it. Why don't you have that? But it obviously, fantasy-wise, makes you pretty damn nervous going into your finals. If you somehow were starting Goff, he's got to hit your bench. Facing Arizona, one of the tougher matchups, surprisingly, a sneaky good pass defense, giving up the 30th most points to quarterbacks, so the second, third hardest matchup for QBs. Brandon Cooks, 59 yards, meh. Robert Woods, 74, okay, but not what you really want. Scoreless in his last 3 or 4. I mean, the only guy
he
you're
was
trusting,
also on my Rose Street Journal team, by the way.
Yeah, just a meh day. I mean, Josh Reynolds, meh. It's just one of those things where, other than Gurley, who's going to steamroll the Cardinals, who, I mean, we just saw what happened to them on the ground week in and week out. They get absolutely destroyed. We know that Gurley's going to dominate them, but other than that, I don't think you can trust a single Ram, and that's kind of crazy to say when this was not 2-3 weeks ago the most explosive attack that you wanted every single piece of. In a tough matchup against Arizona, I don't want any of that passing game. I only want Gurley.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And, right now, if you're looking at the NFC, I guess the Rams, the Saints seem to still be the clear-cut favorite. But, I don't know. The Rams seem like they're ripe for an upset, unless something really changes. And, man, they really went all in on this season. I know they got a good contract with Goff and stuff, but, they've signed a lot of big-name guys on defense for a year, 2 years, stuff like that. And the window may close a little sooner than they hope it would if they don't get it together. Penny stocks, we got a couple. Josh Allen and Robert Foster of the Buffalo Bills circling the wagons. The Bills have won, 6 games? 5 games?
Right, yeah. Feisty little Bills. I mean, they were once the clear-cut laughing stock of the NFL, especially of fantasy. It was whoever's facing the Bills, get me their defense. I don't care how bad they are. And that's now the Cardinals, clearly.
It worked for 6 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. It was literally a bulletproof plan. You'd get 19 to 20 points no matter who was facing the Bills. But Josh Allen, and much due to his legs, not his arm, has been turning this offense around, at least fantasy-wise, getting you some very quality days. He's got 26, 30, 20, 19 in his last 4 since coming back from injury. The offense as a whole moving the ball better, scoring some points. They had a couple 20-point days. Nothing great, but no longer those shutout Bills that you clearly have to just play at whatever defense against. He's been really getting it done. Actually broke Michael Vick's record for most rushing yards in a 3-game span when he went over 100 back-to-back weeks, as we predicted. And then leads the NFL with 506 yards, 6 touchdowns on the ground. Very healthy number there. Had another rushing score this week against the Lions. Wasn't great on the ground, only 16 yards, but found the end zone. Found the end zone with his arm as well. Speaking of the arm, who's benefiting the most from that is Robert Foster. This guy's making plays. He played at Alabama under Daboll, their offensive coordinator, and clearly there's some familiarity. He's using him on tons of deep balls week in and week out. He has double-digit fantasy points in 4 of his last 5. We talked about him. He was our Hail Mary receiver of the week. We recommended you pick him up if you were desperate, and if you did, you got 18 fantasy points, so I hope you did. And if you still haven't, he's only 14% owned coming into a matchup against the Patriots, especially Josh Allen to me, 23% owned, a guy that I would be willing to roll out at quarterback. The Patriots giving up the 9th most points to QBs, and especially struggling with mobile guys. They don't tackle well on defense at all. I would see a Josh Allen, Robert Foster stack potentially putting up some big points in Week 16 if you could somehow stomach that risk.
So insane.
Insane.
But you're not wrong, but it's so
It's insane. But I mean, I don't think I would trust them both. But Allen, I really think will have another 20-plus fantasy point day.
But an Alan Foster pig roast would just be so sweet and succulent.
The sweetest, rarest meat of
the
all.
most succulent pig roast you'll ever have. I think the shittier the stack, the better the pig roast that tastes like when it actually comes to fruition.
Right, exactly.
I think that's
you really
a general
have to slow cook it, right? I like that. Yeah.
Right. If you get a Josh Rosen and like their wide receiver 4 pig roast and you happen to start both, you're licking your fingers. I'm just like, that's the best goddamn pig roast I've ever had.
Absolutely.
That's a rule of thumb. We're patenting, copyright pending.
Yeah.
Robby Anderson, another last penny stock for us. 7 out of his team high 11 targets for 96 and a score. And the Jets, Week 15 loss to the Texans. Honestly, a game they probably should have won. If DeAndre Hopkins wasn't Superman, they probably would have.
I know, insane. And this marks now another day of him being the leading target. 11 targets. Again, just bathing in looks from Sam Darnold. He's only been back for 2 weeks, and he's clearly zoned in on Robby Anderson, who over this game span has 172 yards, 15 catches, 2 scores. So he's been an absolute monster, similar to Derrick Henry, stretch run sneaky hero right now going on with Robby Anderson. Unlike Derrick Henry, this guy's widely available, only 24% owned. Anybody getting 30% of their team's target share is well worth a look, especially when you got the Packers giving up the third most fantasy points to wide receivers in the league coming up for Week 16. If I needed a receiver, I would be going all in to get Robby Anderson. We talked about Foster. Yeah, I like him. DaeSean Hamilton had 12 targets, so yeah, his volume's still there as the slot slut for Case Keenum. But if I needed a fill-in wide receiver, I would go to Robby Anderson as fast as I could and toss him into that spot.
All right, a couple quick injuries to close out the podcast. We have a Ballage situation with Frank Gore, as I alluded to before. And when Frank Gore has a Ballage situation, obviously there's some serious things that need to be discussed. As if anyone saw that quick video of his ball sack jingling back and forth when he was making a run a couple weeks ago. The fact that there's a guy named Ballage that's going to be coming in to replace him, that doesn't just happen by accident. Miami clearly signed this guy because his last name was Ballage. Anyway, Frank Gore, due to a foot issue, is expected to miss the rest of the season, but the Ballage will still be there.
I hate to steal your thunder, but the way you pronounce it is actually Ballage, I believe. It's like a French, but we're going to call him Ballage.
That's incorrect. His name is Ballage. I can read it.
We'll call him Ballage from now on, but I do think it's Kalen Ballage or something like that.
His parents screwed up then because his name's Ballage.
And since Frank Gore is the one he's replacing, yes, he will forever be known as Ballage. So yes, Ballage comes in, replacing the man of the coconut sack, and gets 12 carries for 123 and a TD, 75 yards on the first play of the second half. I mean, this is a guy 4.4 speed at 230 pounds, 6'2", so well built. Pretty freakish athleticism, a very good pass catcher coming out of college. Had that kind of every down workhorse build and skill set. You got marked for poor vision and things that are very necessary for running backs. But I'll tell you what, I didn't see any poor vision on some of these runs that he was knifing through the defense to me. So yes, the matchup's tough against the Jaguars, so that limits his appeal. But we just saw the Jaguars get steamrolled for 230 from Derrick Henry. So it's not like this defense is impossible to beat. So yeah, Ballage, certainly a worthwhile 1% owned right now. A guy that you could add, throw into your flex if you're running back needy. A huge ceiling if you're an underdog. Definitely a low floor because this Miami's backfield's been impossible to project all year, but still a definitely huge ceiling coming from Ballage.
Yeah, I appreciate you rolling with the Ballage pronunciation. Seriously, we're not calling this guy Ballage.
No, I'm with you.
All right, Aaron Jones, speaking of people that really stuck it to some people that had come to believe in him, man, he just looked – I mean, he got hurt, I guess, right? But, I mean,
he did.
He'd also just so Jamaal Williams, I mean, are we saying you got to start Jamaal Williams now? I mean, I think Jones is out for the year, right? Why would you keep playing him? I mean, the Packers are done. There's 2 games left, right?
Right. He's got a sprained MCL, so he's done for the year. Ended his day in the first quarter, 4 carries, 8 yards, as you were alluding to. Just a fantasy nightmare, ruining hopes and dreams for a ton of owners out there. So our apologies if you had to play Aaron Jones. You should have been sitting him against the Bears, to be honest, anyways, but we get it. The talent is tantalizing. But speaking of the Bears defense, somehow Jamaal Williams, out of nowhere, comes in and knifes through them. 12 carries, 55 yards, and a TD, adding 4 receptions and 42 more yards. So just your standard 97 total yard, 1 TD day from Jamaal Williams out of nowhere. The first time he's topped double digits since December of last year. He's been absolutely useless, but they have no one else. Ty Montgomery's been traded. Aaron Jones is now out. Williams is legitimately the only option they have, a pure every down player. And now facing the Jets coming up in week 16, mediocre at best run defense. So nothing scary about them. If he's going to do this to the Bears with the volume, imagine what he'll do when he gets similar volume, if not more, because they'll probably be up higher against the Jets. We just talked about Ballage, maybe a higher ceiling play, but I would be going to Williams first and foremost if I needed any running back reinforcement or just a safer play. He's the guy I would definitely be targeting first off the waiver wire.
Tyler Boyd. If he's out, like, who do you even go to? Not worth it.
The rest of these injuries are all just kind of maybes. So we'll talk about these guys more on Wednesday. It's kind of why I moved them down. We'll keep them on the radar. Boyd,
all right, screw these guys.
The Chargers returning. We have tons of notes that we will make sure to cover for you. It sounds like Boyd isn't returning, and it probably wouldn't.
Well, matter. We can just say right now, and then we'll cut it off there. If Boyd is not returning, you can't. You're going to start someone else on the Bengals?
Like John Ross, Driscoll
Stack. How could you possibly be in the playoffs and be out like the Bengals' fourth string receiver?
Right. The only thing that you might have in your playoffs, and this would be of note, is Joe Mixon obviously had himself a monster day and is a great receiver himself. So maybe it just becomes, let's give Joe Mixon 50 touches. He's obviously a monster on Sunday, 2 touchdowns and just feasting on the Raiders defense. Comes into Cleveland, a pathetic defense themselves, who's given up plenty of 30-point days to running backs. I think if you own Mixon, you're looking at this licking your chops with Boyd out, unless the defense just sells out completely to stop him. But even then, I don't think they will. So Mixon gets the up arrow. Otherwise, you're not playing John Ross. There's no clear pass catcher that's going to be the beneficiary here. Maybe Uzomah, if you're desperate at tight end, sees some more. But again, 12 targets for 20 yards is what he does. So, it's just Joe Mixon. It's the Joe Mixon show against Cleveland. That's the only real takeaway here.
All right, fair enough. That's going to do it. We got a Monday night game coming up that is, relevant for some people. I guess for the Wolf it is. We got the reeling Panthers, who have lost, I think, 5 straight going against the Saints, who, we've seen a chink or two in the Saints' armor recently, but I still expect them to just completely obliterate the Panthers. We'll see what happens. Predictions?
I'm with you. I think the Saints roll. They need to get back on track themselves and kind of reaffirm where they stand in the NFC. So I think they come and win by 2 touchdowns.
All right, fair enough. I think I agree. Any social media you want to pump up? We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here.
I know. Only a couple weeks left here. Maybe even 1 week left for most of you if you're any sane human. You don't play in week 17. So one last chance for us, the Fantasy Fullback Dive, to pave the way to your pay dirt. We've been hitting pretty money all year. We want to get one last shot to bring you to the promised land. So make sure you subscribe, review if you like what you heard. Even if you didn't, let us know what we can do better. It means the world to us, the Fantasy Fullback Dive on iTunes. And otherwise, me personally, hit me up at Roto Street Wolf on Twitter and Snapchat. Always love talking fantasy football. Or you can find us on Facebook at Roto Street Journal. I'll be doing my ranking show tomorrow live around 5 o'clock. It's been getting tons of great interaction. Would love to have you there, especially if you're in your championship game, to discuss the early week rankings. We do our live fantasy tailgate there as well, Sunday mornings. It starts. And then Instagram, pumping out the content, the breaking news, all that good stuff. Roto Street Journal there as well. So find us, follow us, interact with us. Let's get that week 16 win. And then we'll have, I think if you're down that, maybe week 17 kind of take a little sneak peek at my top 100 for 2019. I know you're down, of course. So you have that to look forward to. Even if you're out, stick with us because we're going to get you ready for 2019. That podcast is
exclusively just for the psychopaths out there, by the way.
Absolutely. Link Clegg, I'm looking at you, all you psychos in Australia or wherever you're from. We have a 2019 pod coming back for you. So be staying tuned, Wolfpack. We got huge things coming this next year.
All right, that's awesome. My name's Nat the Truth Jones.
And I'm the Wolf. Best of luck, guys.
Later. All right, not too shabby. Sorry I started going into the injuries.